Well, hi there. Thanks for joining me today. My name is Jamie, and I'm an instructor at TST Prep. And I'm here to talk with you today about advanced strategies for question number 1. Why don't we get started? Okay, so you may have caught earlier on YouTube, I put out a lesson already on question number 1, but today I want to go more deeply. This question can be extremely stressful for students. So I plan to give you some specific strategies today to help you conquer this question and to reduce the amount of stress you face. Again, my name is Jamie. At TST Prep, I do the speaking evaluations, as well as I teach group speaking and private speaking classes. I'm a speaking specialist, and I've been fortunate to help a lot of students pass their TOEFL exams. So I have 19 years of ESL experience, and again, I specialize in TOEFL speaking. When I'm not teaching, I enjoy spending time with my husband, my 2 young daughters, and watching reality TV. That's my guilty pleasure. So today we're going to try to develop a system for coming up with reasons, for my opinion, to almost any independent speaking question. So I mentioned earlier that I do those speaking evaluations. So every day I meet TOEFL takers who are struggling and who are looking for advice. And quite often I hear, oh, I can't stand question 1, or, oh, that independent question is so difficult for me. And there are some reoccurring themes that I hear. My mind goes blank, or I freeze. I simply can't generate ideas. I can't generate reasons. I can't generate stories. So today we're going to try to address this issue that many students struggle with. Well, there's a great opportunity right now. If you want to have a private 30-minute speaking evaluation with me, typically that would cost $29. But right now there's an amazing promotion going on for just $9. You can book yourself a private 30-minute speaking evaluation with me. This promotion is only valid to June 1st, so I would jump right on that. My schedule's filling up. But it will give you an opportunity to learn what are your speaking weaknesses. And I promise to give you specific feedback and strategies on how to improve those weaknesses and what I think your next step should be. I recently had an awesome opportunity to work with Susie, a Texas teacher. I happen to live in Texas as well. I've had a great experience of working with lots of Texas teachers. But Susie was definitely a memorable one, and she was a success story. We had an evaluation, and soon after she participated in my group classes, and very soon after that, she got her required score in speaking and is now getting the next step so that she can become a full-time licensed Texas school teacher. Susie says, my past TOEFL experiences were filled with a lot of anxiety. My English was borderline to succeed, so I decided to take a course. Jamie helped me to feel confident facing a microphone by talking with emotions. I really recommend the classes. I got my goal of 24 in speaking, so she met the Texas State teacher's requirement with just a little bit of help and support. Today, we're going to look at several independent question examples, and we're going to talk about how we can generate ideas. Now, first, let me sort of give you my general thoughts about question number 1. So lots of students ask me if they have to have 2 reasons, and if they give 2 reasons, must they support each reason with an example? My honest opinion to that is, I think the most concerning thing is the language. The language is the most critical part of your response. So whether you choose to organize your response with 1 reason and a nice detailed example, or 2 reasons and 2 examples, or a reason, a personal experience, a reason, a past tense personal story. I think any combination of those kind of supports can be successful. There is not one required style as to how you approach this question. Now, in terms of your strengths, you should try to find the style that works best for you. If you happen to be a good storyteller, I think telling stories is an awesome way to tackle question number one. Stories are very real, they're very personal sounding, and that's exactly what TOEFL raters like to hear. Now remember, your stories don't have to be true. Perhaps you're a skilled actress or actor, and you can say something in a believable, convincing way, even if it's not your true personal experience. I think there are some other ways that we can generate ideas to help us answer this question. So let's go ahead and jump into those sort of thoughts. So many students face the same dilemma. They say, I have trouble explaining why I feel the way I do. Okay, they have trouble supporting their opinion with details and examples. So the strategy that we're going to address today is the concept of thinking in categories. So what's a category? A category is a way to group a large collection of information together into a meaningful section. So while we can never predict the topic or theme of question one, that can be really, really stressful for students. We don't know exactly what kind of theme you'll encounter, and therefore we can't really predict the specific vocabulary that you'll encounter. However, rather than feel overwhelmed by the openness of this question or the vastness, the just enormous scope of the question, we're going to try to help you think in categories. So here at TST Prep, we have identified 4 very common, very universal categories that often can appear or can often make connections to for the independent speaking and perhaps writing questions. These categories are money, relationships, time, and education. These are 4 rather universal themes that we can try to make connections with lots of different situations. So again, rather than feel overwhelmed by question number 1, I don't know what they're going to ask me. I don't know how I'm going to support my opinion. I don't know what kind of reasons and examples I'm going to come up with. You might try to think about these 4 categories as you practice various question number 1s. And what I'm suggesting is that you're going to find ways to make connections with these themes. And perhaps if you've pre-practiced some vocabulary related to these themes, some examples related to these themes, perhaps some idioms or casual expressions related to these themes, you're going to feel more empowered. You're going to feel more in control over your answer to this question. Why did we select these particular categories? Well, these are all things that people generally care about deeply. And when you care deeply about something, you're likely going to have a strong feeling or a strong opinion about that category. So again, when I think about money, it's a critical part of life, right? People always have feelings and opinions when it comes to money. Relationships are everything, right? So again, this is something that people have a strong feeling about. Time, okay? Time can be wonderful, time can be stressful. Again, it's a category that weighs heavily on our lives. Education, this is a very, very important piece, especially with TOEFL, because TOEFL is an academic sort of, universal or university or professional test. A lot of our themes and topics do relate to academics or education. So again, this is a theme that students or people typically have strong opinions on. Okay, so let's go ahead and talk about this for a moment. Let's look at an example question. Do you agree or disagree with the following statement? Our current way of life will have a negative impact on future generations. Now, this example question was pulled from a TST Prep practice test. It happens to be a writing prompt, a writing situation. The advice that I'm giving today, I think, can help you generate good examples for the independent questions in speaking and writing as well. So we're advising you not to treat every question as new and unique. Try to think about those themes. Try to think about those themes that we talked about, themes of money, relationships, time, and education, and try to craft a response. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to walk you through my approach of what I would do this, imagining this was a speaking question, and then I'll also share an example response with you as if this is a writing prompt or writing question. So let's go ahead and I'm just going to open up a new document here. Let's look at this blank screen here and I will paste, excuse me for one moment, I've got too many things going here. Let me try to copy and paste this one more time. And let's see if I can paste this on a new document. Okay. Do you agree or disagree with the following statement? Our current way of life will have a negative impact on future generations. So let me walk you through my approach to speaking question number one. So when I'm presented with an agree or disagree statement, I obviously need to pick my side of the fence. I need to pick my preference, my opinion right away. And I always advise students, don't overthink it. Go with your gut reaction. Your gut is that feeling in your stomach, that sort of just quick, natural reaction. So I'm going to agree with this statement because that's the first sort of natural feeling that jumped into my mind. I agree that our current way of life will have a negative impact on future generations. Now, I'm going to go ahead and walk you through the process. So I typically would begin with a brief introduction. So I could use a phrase like to me, or perhaps personally speaking, or maybe something like generally speaking, or another phrase to tell you the truth. These are various introductory phrases that I often use to begin my response. Now, sometimes to make the response sort of more casual and cool, I like to throw in an idiomatic expression. I may say something after I state my opinion. It's a no-brainer. So this is an idiom in English meaning that it's a really easy decision, okay? I don't have to think really long and hard and deeply about how I feel. It's a no-brainer. It doesn't take a lot of mental power. I know my opinion. Well, I typically try to organize my response around two reasons. Okay, for my first reason, I generally say first of all, and I'm going to present my first reason, and then I'm going to support that with a simple present tense example. Okay, then I'm going to move on and I'm going to give my second reason. I like to introduce my second reason with a phrase like, by the same token. This is just a more casual, cool way to say also or secondly. And I'm going to always support this one with a past tense personal experience. I typically begin that with a phrase like, I remember when, and I talk about my personal past tense experience. I advise this sort of structure or style because A, I think it's more impressive to showcase a combination of both present and past tense. And B, I like to include my personal experience. It makes the answer sound more real, personal, and storytelling-like. Then I'm going to wrap up the response with a conclusion to make this sort of cool and casual sounding. I typically like to end with an idiomatic expression. For example, to make a long story short, and then I'm going to repeat that main idea. So let's talk about approaching this question with categories. Again, the question, do you agree or disagree with the following statement? Our current way of life will have a negative impact on future generations. I don't know, like it's a tough topic or theme. Remember, I mentioned this is probably designed as a writing prompt where you have a little bit more significant time to organize your thoughts and ideas. But I'm going to try to demonstrate how I would treat this as a speaking question. So let's go back to those themes one more time. Let's talk about money, okay? Our current way of life can have a negative impact on future generations. Yeah, I can easily make a connection with money. You know, for me personally, I'm a parent. So the financial decisions that I make today can easily impact my children. For example, if I am very responsible and I set up a good savings account, and therefore I ensure that they have money set aside for their college education, that's going to have a major impact on their life. Okay. It will give them options about where they want to go study, and they won't be forced to borrow a lot of money or accrue a lot of debt. So that's the first sort of example that jumped into my mind, thinking about my actions today on future generations and thinking about the category of money. Relationships. Totally, I can make a connection about this question and relationships. The first theme that sort of jumped into my mind was the idea about how we interact with each other today with technology. It's funny, since we've been on lockdown, you know, with the coronavirus, I find myself making more phone calls. I picked up the phone a few days ago and I called my aunt. She's a really special person in my life, but to be honest, I don't often pick up the phone and check in with her. More often than that, I text her, I send her pictures of my kids, you know, we text back and forth, but rarely do we have that more personal, you know, conversation on the phone. And I think nowadays we rely so heavily on technology that our relationships have become a little bit less personal, a little bit less intimate. So I think the way that we handle our relationships, again, I was thinking about technology, can definitely have an impact on future generations. All right, let's talk about time. So how about the way that, again, do you agree or disagree that, let's revisit the question here, our current way of life will have a negative impact on future generations? So the theme of time. So to be honest, this one's not jumping at me. Like, I don't feel a strong connection with the way I handle my time today is going to impact future generations. I don't know. Now that I say it aloud, of course, I do a lot of examples relating to being a mom and interacting with my kids, just because that's my truth. That's what I know the most about. So yeah, I was just thinking about, like, if I devoted myself 24/7 to work, if I was just a workaholic and working from day to night, and I didn't make time to, you know, interact personally and individually with my kids, and I didn't set aside time to, you know, form special memories with them and help them learn and grow and experience things together, you know, perhaps as they grow older, they will be less of, you know, less well developed. Perhaps they will, you know, struggle and wonder and look back and think about why their mom worked all the time. Now, of course, this is not true in my life, but the point is, when I first looked at time, I didn't really have a natural connection with this theme, and that's fine. Remember, in our question number one responses, I might develop a response around like two themes, two reasons. I might develop a response around one theme and, you know, give several details and examples to support that. So by no means am I trying to approach a question and say, I need to make a true heartfelt, natural connection with all four of these categories. No, that's not true. I'm just trying to demonstrate for something. I'm trying to demonstrate something for you right now. So yeah, time, I just might disregard that one. Doesn't really connect well for me. Fourth category, education. So again, this one connects to my life. I'm a teacher with almost 20 years experience. I have a lot of feelings and opinions about education and how it's evolved since my first year of teaching 19 years ago, and what I'm experiencing and seeing now, what I see my children go through in their schooling. So I definitely have opinions and feelings about how the education that my children are receiving today, how that might impact them in their future life, and how that might impact future generations. So when I first looked at this question, again, I thought it was deep. I thought it was complicated. I was feeling a little bit of stress. But when I took a step back and I said, okay, I've got 4 categories. Let me think about each category. Let me see which connection I make most naturally. Whew, I feel more empowered. I definitely feel more in control. Now, of course, I just went through each category for you, and I know what you're thinking. Jamie, if this were a speaking question, I only have 15 seconds to take some brief notes. And then I must begin speaking immediately. So obviously it's not realistic to say, okay, let's talk about these 4 categories. Which one can I make a connection with? Which one can I connect most strongly? Yeah, I get it. Some of these connections need to come fast. So when I go back to my document here, you know, when I organize my notes, again, I'm trying to organize my response around 2 reasons. So I might, in my 15 seconds, just write down my categories. So I'm going to deal with the topic of relationships, one of our 4 categories. And then for the second theme, I'm going to talk about education. Okay, I could have also talked about money, and I decided that time was not my favorite connection here. So in the 15 seconds, perhaps that's all I write down is relationships and education. I'm obviously not writing down full stories and these detailed, rich sentences. That's the true test of TOEFL. You know, how well can you spontaneously support your responses with details and examples? It's got to be spontaneous. So that's where your fluency is important, because we have to come up with these ideas rather quickly. So this is my structure now. I'm going to go ahead and give you a 45-second example of what my spontaneous response would sound like to this question. And I am going to try to, let me copy this. I'm going to go ahead and time myself for 45 seconds so I can hold true and give you a good response. Okay? So I'm going to say, to me, I totally agree that our current way of life will have a negative impact on future generations. It's a no-brainer. First of all, today's relationships are less personal than in the past because people rely so heavily on technology. For example, we rarely pick up the phone and make personal phone calls. We mostly just text, and that is less personal. And perhaps in the future, our relationships will be less intimate. By the same token, our actions today will impact future generations in the area of education. I remember when I was a student, well, the teachers focused so much on state exams that they didn't teach me critical thinking skills, and I suffered when I went to the university. To make a long story short, this can have a major impact on our future generations. Okay, I was a little bit long-winded, I'll be honest. My conclusion got cut off. But it was a tough topic. Remember, this was probably meant to be a writing topic or theme. But you can hear how I try to talk about those 2 categories of relationships and education, okay? I'm going to try to redeem myself and give you a 45-second response for the next one. Let me go ahead and share with you how we could treat this in an independent writing situation. So I'm going to share with you a response, again, dealing with those categories to this question in a written response. Life today is more comfortable and convenient than ever. Modern society has produced some amazing innovations that have radically transformed our daily habits and intimate relationships. However, many are concerned that the way we live now will have a negative impact on future generations. I totally agree. Our current behavior will definitely hurt future societies because we waste too many resources and use too much energy. Humans are producing more garbage than ever. Every year, the rate of waste increases as the population continues to expand. And much of this garbage isn't recyclable. A few years back, I was living in New York City. I was surprised to see garbage cans on almost every street corner that were constantly filled to the brim. My own small apartment building, with only 10 apartments, had over 100 bags of garbage by the end of the week. And I'm just as guilty of waste as everyone else. I filled up a whole garbage can with random junk almost every day. There's so much waste that could be easily avoided. We could be using washable towels instead of paper towels, portable mugs instead of disposable coffee cups, just to name a few. I fear that humans in the future will have to pay for the waste that we're creating today. Not only does the amount of waste we currently generate harm to the environment, but so does the energy we consume. We rely on fossil fuels to power our cars and heat our homes. The electric companies that supply citizens with the energy needed to live still use coal and natural gas. Every day we are pumping an enormous amount of carbon dioxide into the atmosphere, speeding up the rate of global warming. However, few people have changed, including me. In the summertime, I have air conditioning on at the highest possible setting. In the winter, I make sure every room in the house is warm. Every day, I burn fossil fuels and I contribute to the pollution problem. I enjoy a comfortable modern life filled with convenience, but hardly ever considered how these decisions may harm others in the future. While it's true that life today is more comfortable than ever, I believe our current habits will have a negative impact on the future. The massive amount of garbage and fossil fuels we consume and waste is already contributing to climate change. We must make better decisions about waste and energy today to ensure a better tomorrow. Wow, that's beautiful. It sounds like a politician who is passionate about the environment and is, trying to get everyone on board with a greener and more eco-friendly life experience. So yeah, this example is obviously written really, really well. And perhaps the overall theme or category relates to the environment. But I think I can definitely relate to underlying tones of those categories that we discussed. Let's continue in our presentation and see how we can continue to use these categories so that we're not thinking of every question as a unique, unknown situation that you have to just generate ideas without any support. Okay, so let's continue here. The way that I approach this, do you agree or disagree with the following statement? Our current way of life will have a negative impact on future generations. So you might sort of think about this approach. Money, how would this influence my financial situation? You could talk about your personal experience. My loved one's financial situation, my family, my community's financial situation, or the world's financial situation. So you can see how I can think about that in a small personal way, or bring it bigger, or bigger, or bigger, okay? So again, when I think about categories, I can always think about my personal connection, my family and friends, the impact on my community, and the impact on the world. And I think that written essay that we read, beautifully demonstrated how we can think about this on a personal level, and then how it impacted the community, and how that could, impact the world in a bigger way. Okay. So again, we could think about this in terms of relationships. How would this influence my relationships, my loved ones' relationships, my community's relationships, or the world's relationships? And we can follow the same pattern with every theme or question we think about. So when we talk about education, it could be personal, my own education. It could be about your family members, your children, future, education. The community's education, okay? Or even bigger, the world's education. So thinking in categories can definitely help you feel more empowered, more in control of your response. Well, I want to provide a couple more examples for you. So let's go back to an earlier screen here where we looked at several independent questions. Let's look at example 2. For your senior year of college, you must volunteer at the school library. Would you rather stack books, read to children, or help with internet searches? So remember, in independent speaking question number 1, we often have to give our preference or our opinion about something. So this task is a preference. Of these 3 options, which one would you prefer? So again, let me walk you through how I might approach this task. So let's copy and look at this again in my document here. So I'm going to go ahead and replace this question with a new one that we're going to consider. So again, obviously my first step is to go with my gut reaction. Which of these 3 options do I most naturally connect to? And I'm going to go with the middle choice, reading to children. I'm a teacher. Again, I've got kids. So this is the one that jumps out at me that I feel I have a real, true personal connection. So again, in my note taking, I am going to consider 2 reasons or themes why I feel this way. So let's talk about those themes again. Well, I've got relationships here. Yeah, I can definitely make a connection with how reading, sharing stories together can help build relationships. I'll tell you the truth. The best part of my day, every day, is nighttime, when everything is sort of quiet and calm, and I sit with each of my daughters, one-on-one, and we read books together. So I have a 9-year-old, and we typically buddy read, meaning I'll read a page, she'll read a page, or I'll read a paragraph, she'll read a paragraph. And it's such a wonderful experience to watch her learn and grow as a reader and get lost in the story. I have a 5-year-old daughter who just loves story time, and I can see her developing her reading skills. So for me as a teacher, as a parent, it's such an exciting time. So when I think of reading, I definitely can make connections with relationships. It's a critical, special time that we can enjoy together. So furthermore, education. I can stick with these themes that I used in my previous question, and I can easily make connections with reading and education. These things definitely go hand in hand. So I think that it's a personal, these categories can help me feel less overwhelmed tackling this question. So I'm going to give you guys a 45-second example of how I would approach this question using those categories about relationships and education. Okay. Personally speaking, I'd much rather read to children. For me, it's a no-brainer. First of all, when I can share books with children, I am building a deep, intimate relationship with them. For example, when I can share stories that I loved as a child with other people, I can share that love of reading. For example, when I read a Curious George book, it brings me back to my childhood, and I can share that with future generations. By the same token, reading with children definitely develops their love for reading, which is a critical part of education. I remember when my mother shared books with me, it made me want to become a teacher. In a nutshell, sharing books with children is awesome. 45 seconds. Yes, I did it. I had to use a different conclusion. I sometimes have to be flexible and adjust when my time is short. I use a different idiom, in a nutshell, and I wrapped up my main idea. Okay, so you can see how, again, those categories, relationships, education can be helpful. What if I wanted to talk about the other themes? Money, or perhaps time? Yeah, I think I could make connections, again, depending on which theme I'm dealing with, but I think these are pretty universal topics. Let's go ahead and look back at the third example question. Let's go ahead and see how I could use this again with themes, with categories, and try to approach this question. So let's go ahead and replace this question. Do you agree or disagree with the following statement? It's better to be a member of a group than to be a leader of a group. Okay, obviously the first thing I need to do is pick my preference there. I want to be a leader, okay? I want to be the queen. Yeah, I want to be in control. That's my first preference. Now, let's go ahead and walk through some reasons why I might want to be in control. So I'm going to switch up these themes here because maybe it's getting a little bit boring. Let's talk about the first theme, which we talked money. Okay. So how could being a leader relate to the theme of money? Well, yeah, I can definitely make a connection here because I feel like leadership skills are valuable, qualities. And when I'm in the corporate world or when I'm, looking for a job, I think being a leader or having had leadership experience is definitely going to help me have a higher position and thus earn more money. So I think I could definitely tackle this experience. How about the themes about being a leader in relation to, let's do the other theme, time. I haven't demonstrated that one. Yeah, so, the leader definitely sort of sets the timetable and makes the structure of the project. And for me, I'm a bit of a control freak. I definitely want to control that timetable. I don't want to wait until the 11th hour. We say wait until the last minute and be scrambling to put something together. I want to control that time structure so that my group is, sure to complete the task on time. So earlier I demonstrated some themes about relationships and education. Now I'm going to deal with money and time, but you can see how we can use these themes in different situations and try to make connections. So my task now, I'm going to give you a 45-second example of this situation, but do you agree or disagree? It is better to be a member of a group than to be a leader. Okay. Here we go. Generally speaking, I disagree that it's better to be a member than to be a leader. For me, it's a no-brainer. I want to be a leader on every project I tackle. First of all, if I serve a leadership position, I can gain valuable skills that will help me in my professional life. For example, job companies often say that people with leadership skills earn at least 30% higher salaries than those who don't. By the same token, if I take on leadership positions, I can manage the time schedule of the project. I remember when I was given a group assignment in college. Well, I stepped into the leadership role and I managed the schedule so that we finished the project with tons of time to spare. In a nutshell, the leadership position is best. All right, did it. So you can see how I can use these categories or themes. Now, let me throw out a couple other things here. When I think about vocabulary, I am a fan of idioms. So I am typically trying to throw in casual words and phrases. Now, I didn't have a chance to do that in my spontaneous examples today, but let me go ahead and give you some examples. For example, when I think about time, I mentioned earlier the expression to wait until the 11th hour. This is a common expression in English that basically means to wait until the last minute. Okay, so when I think about time management, for me personally, I'm not someone who waits until the 11th hour. I tend to tackle my jobs and my responsibilities, in a very, very responsible manner. I'm not somebody who's going to be, again, panicked at the last minute trying to accomplish their task. So when I practice talking about time, I might experiment throwing in that idiom, that phrase. Let's talk about money for a moment. I have an idiom for that as well. To cost an arm and a leg. This is an expression in English meaning to be very expensive, to be very costly. So again, if I were going to practice different situations, I might try to see if that expression was relevant or important on the theme. For example, if I'm talking about whether I prefer to shop in a store or shop online, I might talk about how I prefer shopping online because you can get some really great deals when you can compare with thousands of different websites versus shopping in the store where one single sweater can cost an arm and a leg, okay, to be very expensive, to be very costly. So I want to give you just a little preview of the kind of language you can learn if you invest in, professional help and support through TST Prep. I want to make one other point today. Some students feel really stressed about personal examples. Well, again, remember, it doesn't have to be your personal experience. You could talk about the experience of your family member, perhaps your friend, your roommate. You could talk about these things, not unnecessarily on a personal level. So like today, I talked a lot about being a mother or, dealing with kids. Perhaps you don't have that same experience. Maybe you need to talk about your nieces, your nephews, the children of your sisters or brothers. Or perhaps you'll talk about, a different relationship. It doesn't have to be your true life. And again, it doesn't have to be true. You could sort of lie and make up your experiences. Another thing I do sometimes when I'm feeling sort of desperate or without a personal connection is I try to connect in a more general way. Check out this sentence. I recently listened to a podcast on this topic, okay? Or I recently read an article on this topic. Now, I could try to throw in some sort of fake fact, fake news, a fake statistic. I recently listened to a podcast on this topic, okay? A survey of large corporations reported that CEOs with past leadership skills earn 30% higher salaries than those without leadership skills, okay? Okay, I just made up some fake news. You can see how if I don't have a personal connection, I might be able to pretend that I read something or I listened to something and make it sound really convincing, like it's a fact. All right, guys, let me wrap this up for you today. So what we basically went over today is how we can try to empower ourselves in question 1. Again, we can never predict the topic or theme, but if we try to think in categories, if we try to find these universal connections with lots of different topics, I think you might be able to sort of brainstorm some examples, some vocabulary, perhaps some idioms, some themes relating to these common categories, and it can help you feel more in control of your ability to support your opinion with reasons and examples. Now, again, this is not a simple task. It's something that a lot of students struggle with. So if you want further support, reach out to me at TST Prep. Again, right now you can get a $9 30-minute speaking evaluation. And that might be a great starting place for you. Or perhaps you recognize that you need a little bit more feedback and help and support. There's group classes and private classes, and these are just awesome opportunities to get specific strategies and techniques for your success and to get yourself on the path to getting your score as quickly and easily as possible. Check us out, tstprep.com. We're here to help you. Let's make this experience a lot more pleasant and enjoyable. Thanks for watching today. I do appreciate you tuning in. It's a real pleasure when I meet students lately for evaluations and whatnot, and they say, hey, I watched your video. I'm so glad that you're watching the videos. I'm so glad that you're on board with, getting further help and asking for help, and I'm more than happy to do that for you. So thanks for watching today, and I really hope that you feel more empowered to master TOEFL speaking question number 1. All right, thanks a lot. Bye-bye.